If we truly want, we're focused on the money, trust me, there are a lot of other careers out there that is not a lawyer, that is not a physician, that could more easily accumulate wealth in a much shorter amount of time with a lot less stress and a lot of dedicated education than the routes that we've chosen. What do you think about that statement where people think lawyers are just out there lying all the time, every day? Like that's their job, is to lie.
We have very, very, very strict rules on lying and lying under oath. We can be disbarred for it. You could commit the crime of perjury where you are lying under oath. So there are a lot of ethical concerns, but ethical rules that keep us on the straight and narrow. I wouldn't say that we are liars. I would say that we have figured out a way using our words to persuade. I don't even like the word manipulate. I like the word persuade. The next misconception I have about doctors is that you walk into the room, you see your doctor, and your doctor is expected to know absolutely everything there is about medicine, about anatomy, about every sort of ailment. Tell me more about that.
Medicine,
Law, friendship. This is Dr. Long and Lawyer Nik. You're listening to the Medico-Legal Brief.
one doctor, one lawyer, and a whole lot of gray area.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Medico-Legal Brief, where medicine meets the law. I'm Lawyer Nik. I'm with Dr. Long. And today, we want to dive into some of the misconceptions about our two professions. I don't know about you, Long, but I feel as if people have this idea of what a lawyer does or should do. Same thing with a physician. And we're held to that standard without really knowing that we're being held to this standard. And when something doesn't go as planned or something goes wrong, or somebody has such a strong, almost conspiratorial approach towards what we do, so there's some backlash and there's some negative input there. So, I want to give us the opportunity to clear up some of these misconceptions.
I agree. It's interesting that as someone who pursues our career, whether that's pursuing law or medicine, we have an idea of what it is and what the prestige or the clout you may get from it. But then once you're actually in it, then you start seeing what other people are saying about the profession. Hopefully, we can clear all that up today.
Definitely, because when you're in it, you see how the sausage is made and you realize, okay, it's not as glamorous, or I'm working a lot harder than I thought, or this is actually a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. And then you throw in the nature of your clients or your patients and all these adjacent ancillary things, and things can get out of hand really, really fast. What I'd like for us to do is I would like to bring up maybe a misconception about doctors or physicians, something that I think or the general public might think about y'all. And then you do the same towards lawyers, and let's see if we can clear some of the air for our listeners.
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan.
I'll start small here. The first thing is that all doctors are rich. You guys have oodles of money, and you guys are just the richest of the rich throughout the community.
This sort of misconception does come from a little bit of truth. I'm not going to lie that physicians don't make much. Obviously, we've done an episode where we talk about income differences between all the types of specialties. So anyone that's interested, go back and check out that episode. But yes, physicians are definitely in the top quartile of income earners in the US. We make quite a good amount of money. I don't expect or would think that any physician should be complaining about their income. However, it does come with certain burdens and stressors that along the journey, you accumulate all this debt. Again, we've had an episode where we talked about this. The debt accumulates starting in undergrad, then it balloons into medical school, and then it balloons even further in residency. Throughout this entire time, as you're schooling, you really cannot work. These interest rates that are usually 7 to 9%, they're causing these student debts to massively grow without any backup plan. If you're not going to be paying this off, it's going to balloon sometimes up to 500,000, 700,000 by the time you graduate residency, depending on how long it takes. And so, yes, physicians make a good amount of money. However, it's because it's needed to pay off the student debt that has been accumulated prior.
Yeah, Long, I think that most people just see the profession and see that there's a lot of money behind such a prestigious profession, but they don't look into the fact that you paid a couple $100,000 to go to medical school. And on top of that, you had debt that probably carried over from college. There's only a very small number of students that go through the process and have a full ride and get all their debt covered, or have the financial means from either family money or paying their way through. So the notion of you're getting paid a higher salary, but at the same time you have a lot of debt to cover, I think is missed. In the law, people automatically think that lawyers are all wealthy and lawyers are all rich. Again, prestigious career. And there are some lawyers that make a good living, but you also have lawyers that have accumulated a lot of debt. That any given law school, it could end up being two or $300,000 over the course of 3 years. And then when you get out, there's some positions in which you're not getting paid a lot. You might only be getting paid 60, 70, $80,000, and you have hundreds of $1,000s of debt looming behind you. I don't know how you feel about this, but do you think it's because there is this notion that lawyers and doctors have to keep up appearances, whether it's via the way we look, whether it's the car we drive, whether it's the jewelry that we're wearing or the outfits that we bring to the boardroom or the hospital? Do you think that has something to do with it?
It's multifactorial, and I do think it's a trap that a lot of high income earners fall into, which is keeping up with the Joneses or keeping up with appearances. You've delayed gratification for so long, for how many years you've gone to school, you've dedicated this time to learning your craft. You're not able to go do a lot of the things that your other colleagues are doing who are maybe in business, who are in finance, who graduate after college and then go straight into their career. You are missing a lot of those life joys. You're putting everything off so that you can ultimately reach that goal of becoming a lawyer, becoming a physician. Once you reach it and obtain it, whether you have the money or not, sometimes you want to just splurge and treat yourself. And that's the trap that we all fall into because you're accumulating more debt, but now you're accumulating private commercial debt, which usually is a lot higher interest than just student debt. We are delaying this gratification for so long that everyone else gets a head start. People who are graduating a 4-year degree come out and start their job right away. They are creating that 401k, they're starting their retirement fund. Whereas physicians, we truly aren't contributing to any sort of retirement. Maybe once you get to residency, but honestly, most people don't because when you're in residency, you're making almost minimum wage if you truly calculate out the amount of hours that you're dedicating to residency and then how much you're getting paid. You're trying to decide, am I going to pay down my student debt or I'm going to put it towards retirement or am I saving it for the move that I'm going to have to do after I graduate residency? There's just so many things to keep in mind. And that's why you should not ever judge a book by its cover. But I kind of think that as a society, we focus in on a lot of entertainment TV shows that also blows up the image of what a physician and a lawyer should be.
I definitely agree. And to your point about 401k, I didn't have a 401k until I was at 28 or 29 and I started working at Lockheed. Before that, there was no 401k. I was just trying to pay off student debt and survive paying my benefits at the small law firm. It's wild to think that a 22-year-old coming out has already established a 401k. So they have a 6 or 7 year head start. And that's just from the lawyer perspective. For you as a physician going through residency, going through some additional schooling there, you're later to the game. And yeah, to the point about TV and movies, you see these high power attorneys in the courtroom. And usually they portray the Harvey Specter, the nice car, the nice suit, the nice dress, the expensive bottle of champagne or whiskey as that's a good lawyer. And the disheveled person is not a good lawyer. They're probably not making a lot of money because they don't have a lot of clientele. But that's not always the case. And I think that there's also this point of when you get out into practice, you want to look expensive, then your client trusts you more. You want to look expensive to where your client wants to pay you the money, where you pull up in your nice car and the client says, oh, wow, I got a good expensive attorney, regardless of what they're paying you, because it makes them feel nice and warm and cozy as to who they selected for their lawyer.
Well, as we're talking about this misconception of the way we present ourselves, I have a misconception that I want you to address. Lawyers tend to have this rap, this perception, or this reputation that they basically lie for a living. What do you think about that statement where people think lawyers are just out there lying all the time, every day? Like that's their job is to lie.
So we have very strict rules on lying and lying under oath. We can be disbarred for it. You could commit the crime of perjury where you are lying under oath. There are a lot of obviously ethical concerns, but ethical rules that keep us on the straight and narrow. I wouldn't say that we are liars. I would say that we have figured out a way using our words to persuade. I don't even like the word manipulate. I like the word persuade because being able to speak in a persuasive manner, by the end of the conversation, the other side says, okay, that made a lot of sense. There are good lawyers and there are bad lawyers. Don't get me wrong. There are probably some lawyers out there that lie their ass off. And depending on the situation, lying via an email over a contract versus lying in front of a judge in open court are two very, very, very different scenarios of lying. Say an email that says, "Hey, opposing counsel, I didn't look at this when you've been looking at it for the last 3 days." A little white lie not going to hurt anything, but going into court and lying to a judge about that is a problem. So I take exception to the fact that everyone thinks that we're liars. We need to understand how to persuade. We need to understand how to look for the loopholes. And overall, ethical concerns and ethical restrictions really restrict us from lying because if we do lie, we can put our whole license at risk, and that's our livelihood.
Believe it or not, physicians also have a very similar perception by the public. The public actually has, over the years, over the decades, has been losing trust towards physicians and just the medical profession itself. Obviously, COVID didn't help the situation and the way that the government and the medical professionals handled that situation. And so there's a lot of pushback and conspiracies behind physicians and our intentions on what we want to do. But I think that it's conflated by other issues at hand as well. Because again, we have a lot of hands in the cookie jar at this point. We have the government interrupting, making laws, and legislating basically what physicians are allowed to do and how they're allowed to practice, what type of business they can operate, versus the pharmaceutical companies who are jacking up prices, and there's not really anything the physician can do. But that's how the patient gets their pharmacologic medications, is by going through the physicians. They feel that the physician is at that forefront and causing these issues, but it's really not. And then obviously the third one are the health insurances. At the end of the day, they are acting more in a medical professional role than the physicians are, because they get to freely choose what to deny and what to accept, what to cover for patients' treatment plans. These are all confounding factors in this idea that physicians are out there lying or trying to cause harm. But that's not true at all, because we took an oath, the Hippocratic Oath, where first thing is to do no harm. And so our goal is to go out there and help. If we truly want to focus on the money, trust me, there are a lot of other careers out there that is not a lawyer, that is not a physician, that could easily accumulate wealth in a much shorter amount of time with a lot less stress and a lot of dedicated education than the routes that we've chosen.
It's almost as if we are being blamed for the problems of the system. That holds very true because we are, when you think about it, the front line, the first interaction that comes between your patient or your client. For instance, if somebody walks in to my law firm and says, "This is my problem, how can we fix it?" And I say, "All right, we're going to do this, but it's going to take 5 months to get before the judge," they think it shouldn't take that long. But when you look at it, the court's docket is full for the next 5 months. There's no way that we can get in to see the judge. So you're going to have to wait for 5 months. And they think that I'm lying. They think that I'm dragging it out. Coming back to maybe the doctor position, you might say, "Hey, I want to do this treatment. And then I want to follow up with this treatment. And then I want to follow up with this treatment." And they think there's some weird conspiratorial aspect between you and Big Pharma or you and the health insurance, when really you're just saying, "Hey, the system requires me to give you this, and the process requires me to give you this." And then you come back and we reassess because there's restrictions on what I can and cannot do. And then from there, we'll move forward and then we'll move forward. Frustration with the system gets blamed on us a lot. And because these individuals don't understand the system, they just accuse us of not being forthcoming and not being transparent and essentially lying.
Right, right. I want to give an example in this situation, actually, because that would help our viewers the most in understanding what we have to deal with on the back end when it comes to working in the medical field. As a physician, I have a patient that comes in with back pain. I examine the patient. I have a very high suspicion that there's something more than just your muscle ache, muscle pain, muscle strain. I truly think that there's probably some sort of nerve impingement. Guess what? I know that the MRI is going to tell us the most answers, the quickest and the most sufficient way. However, the thing that limits that is going to be our health insurance. Your health insurance is going to say, and they're going to dictate, no, we're not going to go straight to an MRI because it's way too expensive. You've got to try the conservative management first, which means we have to do an x-ray and then we have to send you to physical therapy. Those are our first line options based on not medical evidence, but because the health insurance, they want to save as much as they can in case you do improve with just those things. Me as the physician making the exam in person, I've decided probably not going to help and that we're going to end up going down the MRI. And 95% of the time, I'm right. We end up getting the MRI. I wish we could skip those steps. Now, the other thing that we usually have to deal with is then now medications that we want to prescribe to help. There are a handful of muscle relaxers out there that might be helpful in this sort of situation. I have no idea which one your health insurance is going to cover. There's Cizanidine, there's cyclobenzaprine, there's baclofen. Basically, I'm just throwing my hand into this bag, pulling out one random muscle relaxer, hoping it's the one that your insurance is going to cover. I send it in, and your insurance says, no, that's not the one that we want. Pick a different one. So I go in the bag again, pick out a second one, send it through, and they say, guess what? It's still not right. We're not covering that one. Now I have to send in that third one, hoping it's right. And it usually is, but it takes time for all those different steps. This is where the patient does not see the back end of the extra work that we have to do, the prior authorization. And so they feel like we're the one holding up the system, but it really isn't. It's all of these other players within the healthcare system, within our society that causes the issue.
And it almost looks bad if you, as the professional, are not taking responsibility or accountability. If you were to say, I'm sorry, that's your health insurance, that's the pharmacy, that's whoever, anybody but you, it almost sounds like you're displacing blame and that you're not being accountable. Then in certain situations, you look more mistrusting. You look more dishonest. It happened in law all the time. It still happens in law. I will tell somebody something. I will give my legal opinion about something. And then I almost have to bear the burden of why it won't work out instead of just saying, well, it's going to be the system here. It's going to be the system there. Because then you just say, okay, you're just blaming it on the system. You really don't know what you're talking about, or you're being dishonest and not transparent about what could or couldn't happen. It's like, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. Your statement leads into the next misconception I have about doctors, that you walk into the room, you see your doctor, and your doctor is expected to know absolutely everything there is about medicine, about anatomy, about every sort of ailment. Tell me more about that.
I wish. I mean, even the smartest of the smart physicians would not be able to know every little facet of medicine. There's just way too much. And every single day, there's new articles, there's new pharmaceutical drugs coming out. And these are things that we have to keep on top of while we're also managing patients. There's just a big workload that we have to keep up with. Realistically, there's no way we can. We try our best by doing the amount of education that we do, which is the 4 years of college, the 4 years of medical school, and then a minimum of 3 years of residency. And that's try to jam pack in decades and decades of medicine over the years, understanding how medications work, how they interact, contraindications. We definitely try to learn the basics and a very good understanding. That's also why specialists have evolved from the generalists that we used to have. Prior to a couple decades ago, it was all family physicians, internal medicine physicians who were doing the majority of the work. But then as more diagnoses and problems were coming to the forefront, we needed people to specialize so that they could really do their dedicated education on that specific topic so that we could send patients to them. At the end of the day, I may not have all the answers, but I at least know how to get the answers, whether that is reaching out to my specialist colleague, whether that's looking up online. There are a couple of resources. Nowadays, there's even AI that will help us accumulate information and get it all into an easy package to read. However, there's always needs to be skepticism. And that's why it's important to have a physician at your helm, because they are going to be the one to determine whether or not the information is factual or is it something that AI or this article just pulled out from thin air.
So it's funny that you mentioned that because I have a recent experience with my PCP. Just over the last week, I found a new PCP, and he's a young doctor. It looks like he just got out of residency within the last year, so he's establishing patients. And one thing I was looking forward to is trying to get in to see a PCP sooner rather than later. And sometimes you guys are booked out months in advance, especially if you've been around the block for a while. So health insurance hooked me up with this guy. I looked him up. I said, what the hell? And while I was establishing care and we were running through health, I brought up the fact that a certain part of my chest that felt a little swollen around my ribs. And he was pushing and prod, and we were talking about that. And he actually went straight to his computer and he goes, hey, I'm actually just going to look this up really fast. I'm going to pull some information. And that was the first time I've ever had a doctor in the room admit to me that he was doing live research while he was talking to me. After knowing you and knowing what you do and getting the behind the scenes look, it always felt like the doctor would leave the room and talking with you, you're actually going going out to your computer at times, you're looking up different things, medications, ailments, symptoms, and trying to figure out what it could be. Well, people just see the doctor leave the room, come back, have the answers, and they don't really put two and two together that there was maybe some research or some conversation with other medical staff that took place. But he was just very transparent and open about it. And I actually really like that because I'm like, okay, so he's trying to go through the motion of he's got something going on. What is it? What can we define it as? And even after I left, he gave me a call and said, hey, I looked more into it. Are you feeling this and are you feeling that? Because these were two other things that we did not talk about that I found in my research after the fact. And so we talked it through and then we used the portal to communicate. And ultimately, nothing came of it. I ended up going to go get an ultrasound of it and everything was completely normal. It's just my body aging. But I really appreciate the fact that he was forthcoming about it. You don't always see that. And I wonder if that is a new generational thing with newer doctors or if that's just this doctor's personality type.
I think it's both. It is more common nowadays to just show your humility. We don't know everything. Everyone expects us to know everything, but there's just no possible way. It depends on the person who's willing to admit that. But you're right. I personally would rather be honest with my patients so that if anything bad were to happen, that we understand that we tried to search out, discover the treatment plan appropriately rather than being gung ho and overzealous and with a high ego saying, hey, this is the right answer, but then it ended up being the wrong answer. This is why it's important to find someone that matches your personality and the vibes that you want. If you want someone that will walk into the room and tell you as it is and they always know everything is right, then that's who you want. But if you want someone that has some humility, who is able to say, hey, I don't know the answer, but I can look it up, that's who you seek out.
And that's the same thing for lawyers too. You might specialize in one area of the law and somebody will approach you and say, hey, I have this legal problem. Can you help me? And any good lawyer will hear the hypothetical and listen to it and try to work their way through it. But we don't know everything. As a family law attorney, I would not be the right person to defend your, assault and battery charge. As a criminal defense attorney, I should not be the attorney drafting your small business paperwork. There are some attorneys that can do it all and they'll figure it out. But there's this expectation that we know all areas of the law so that we can come off competent. I even remember during practice, if somebody would bring something up, we would have go-to phrases. Instead of saying, I don't know about that, we would say, that's interesting. I need to look at that, make sure something with the law hasn't changed in the last couple months just to verify, but I'll get back to you on that question. There is some truth to that, but there is this kind of white lie going back to, are we being, honest? There's this white lie of, okay, I need to present myself as competent and confident and intellectual and know the law, but I'm running back to my laptop and trying to research every facet. Then the next time I speak with that client, I do seemingly have all the answers. And that's what the research is. And that's what in law school we research a ton because we need to understand how to find the answers, not necessarily know all of the answers right at that moment.
So then, do you think that that sometimes backfires on us when we make the job look so easy? That one of the misconceptions that I feel a lot of people have about lawyers is that anyone can go out there and be a lawyer themselves, or anyone can go out there and represent themselves in court. Legally, that's a possibility. Someone can represent themselves, but the sentiment that being a lawyer is easy, do you think that that is a true misconception, or do you think it's a correct perception?
That's a true misconception. I do believe that anybody can go out and represent themselves. The problem that they face is they might be looking at their case in a microcosm. They might see the fact that the tree from the neighbor fell onto their fence and not understand that there might be some more liability and some different arguments and some different violations. There might be civil charges or criminal charges or what have you. They just might be saying, I have the right to argue that the tree fell on my fence. And then on top of that, you throw in procedural aspects, how to file, when to respond, how to request discovery, how to object in court. There's a lot to it. I always, always, always recommend trying to hire a lawyer if you can. There are some instances in small claims court where you can go Judge Judy style and go argue against somebody, and the rules of procedure are a little bit more lax there, but there's a lot to it. And that's why you pay your lawyer what you pay them. And I've heard this with other professions. You're not necessarily paying them for the work that they're doing in that moment. You're paying them for the knowledge that they've accumulated over the last decade to make sure that they're doing it right. You might complain about the half an hour that you have to pay while you're on the phone and they have to go draft a pleading, but you're also covering the fact that they have this knowledge from doing it over and over and over again and making sure that it's done right and it's done on time. There is a misconception that anybody can go be a lawyer on their given day in court. I think anybody can go through law school and become a lawyer, but I don't think that you could just show up off the street and make a good defense. We see that with these YouTubers and these constitutional activists where in the moment they might be making a applicable argument that seems valiant and seems very, I'm sticking it to the man. But when you start breaking it down, they get arrested under different charges, they get to court and the judge embarrasses them. There's so many different avenues where I would just let the professionals handle it.
Hmm. My next topic here, or that I'm leading into, is going to be a hot take. It's going to be a little controversial, but we see a very similar trend in the medical field where everyone wants to be a doctor, everyone wants to be called a doctor, but then not actually go through medical school and residency. We're seeing a lot less training in medical professionals who come out doing the same things that physicians do. And 80% of the time, when the cases are easy, when it's simple, when it's straightforward, absolutely. There are good physician assistants, bad physician assistants, good nurse practitioner, bad nurse practitioners. There's good physicians, bad physicians. We know that it ranges across the board. But what we're seeing now is that everyone thinks that they can do a physician's job because, again, 90% of the time, the cases are super easy. Comes in with psoriasis, easy to prescribe a prescription steroid ointment to fix the problem. But it's like you said, what you're paying for when you see the physician is that they know what to do when it isn't easy, when the rash is something more severe, or maybe it's something that is so rare that maybe the physician assistant or nurse practitioner has never seen it. But because the physician has a lot more training, not only during medical school, but doing the in person, hands on, direct contact residency training that they have over 14,000 hours through the span of 3 to 4 years. They're seeing all this. They're learning from a senior physician to get that experience. And so, yes, we make the job look easy. A lot of people feel like they can do the same. People are doing the same, but it really dilutes down the reason why we get so much education in the medical field.
Let's take it just to the layman. Let's take it to me or my neighbor or my dad or my mom. A lot of people, because of our access to information, originally it was WebMD, and now it's Chat GPT and Claude and AI and YouTube videos and so on and so forth. We go in and we do our research. Immediately when something happens, very rarely do I jump on the phone or get on the portal with my doctor. I'm looking it up myself first. And I start making these assumptions and these conclusions and pretty much diagnosing myself as to what's going on. And then if I think in my extensive medical education that I don't need to go see a doctor, then I'm not going to go see a doctor. Or if I believe that I should go see a doctor, then I will go see a doctor. And no offense to people out there, but there is a spectrum of people that are very, very smart and a spectrum of people that are not necessarily as smart or as competent as they should be. And sometimes it's the people that are on the lower levels of, I don't want to say intelligence, but the people that just aren't as competent that make these big grandeur gestures of what they should be doing with their medical journey. And those people end up getting sick or end up doing something wrong and end up causing themselves more harm rather than just going to go see the professional. We heard it all the time with our fathers and the fathers before them. The stubborn, like, oh, they never went to go see a doctor. They just sat at home. And before you know it, they die of a heart attack or they end up getting cancer and they never knew because they were just saying, it's just my shoulder pain. Oh, I've seen this before. It's just this. It's just that. So there is a little bit of aspect there to where everybody thinks that they can be a doctor. And then you jump on the holistic train where somebody with good marketing and a good marketing strategy and being an influencer can then post things about vitamins and medicine and holistic approaches, and it could catch like wildfire. And that could be the exact opposite of what they should be doing from a medical approach.
Hmm. This conversation, I don't mean it to be negative. I want to make sure that I let patients know that I absolutely want them to bring their research, their data, whatever pushback that they have, bring it to me so we can read it together. We can evaluate the data together and just make sure it makes sense. I will then give you my advice or my perspective of the situation based on my training, and then we can decide together what we want to do. It's a very collaborative environment in the medical field, especially as we move forward, because it's important that there is so much information that everyone can get. You need someone or you need something that will help narrow down and get rid of all the extra noise. And sometimes that's hard when you're doing it alone by yourself with ChatGPT, which is not a medical AI either. And it has been known to create new data. It's really important that you follow up with an expert and hopefully someone that you trust, which is why I say all the time that when you are looking for your primary care physician or primary care clinician, you make sure that you trust this person and take 2 to 3 visits before you make that final decision to trust them indefinitely or not. But my goal as a family physician is that I will take care of you from baby all the way till you're old. That is my ultimate goal. If we can build that trust over the years, I would love that. Most physicians out there would say the same. I hope that helps our viewers understand some of these misconceptions that are out there. But at the end of it, physicians going into their professions, we truly do go into it to help patients, not for all these extra extravagant things that people think.
Yeah, that resonates with me because sometimes we'd have clients come in and they'd relay the law, and you want to be collaborative, but you're listening to them. And you're like, okay, that's wrong. That's right. That's wrong. That's right. That's wrong. That's wrong. You give that feedback and they push back and they say, well, no, this is exactly what I found. And I might be a little crass here, but you almost want to yell at them and be like, that's why I went to law school. That is exactly why I went to law school. That is why I've been practicing as an attorney. That's why I've surrounded myself with other lawyers so I can handle this problem. But you know what? What do I know? You don't want to listen to me? Go get arrested, right? And you can't do that because you want to be right by your patients. You want to be right by your clients. You want to be helpful. But sometimes people, they don't make it easy for you.
No, no, they don't. But I think this is a great conversation, a great place to end before we get into this huge rant and venting session. We've already done that in the past, the other episodes that everyone should go and check out. But this is a great place to end our medical legal brief episode. Make sure you follow us on our social medias and make sure that you stay up to date with our episodes because we post every Wednesday, 10 Central Time. So make sure you find us on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you may be. And we hope you join us for our next episode next week.
Yes, we're doctors. Yes, we're lawyers. No, this podcast is not medical or legal advice. Do not take anything we say as a reason to perform your own heart surgery, represent yourself in court, or diagnose your neighbor's rash. This is for entertainment only. Think of it like hanging out with your smartest, wittiest friends, not a substitute for an actual appointment. If you act on anything we say without talking to your own professional, that's on you. Seriously, don't do that.